Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Insights in Tech. I'm here with Amit Yoran. Amit, pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Great to join
Pleasure.
you.
Wonderful. Amit, could you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them who you are and what you do?
Sure, my name is Amit Yoran. I'm the chairman and CEO of Tenable. Tenable is a NASDAQ listed company, and most people know us for Nessus and our vulnerability management work. And so we're the leader in helping companies assess and understand what systems they have in their environment and how and where those systems are vulnerable.
Great. So, Amit, there's been disruptions and distractions due to COVID-19. Businesses have quickly pivoted to do their best to support workforces in the new remote work environment. However, hacking hasn't stopped. If anything, it has increased. So, Amit, where do you think the biggest weaknesses are that businesses need to be aware of and need to be thinking about?
Yeah, what we've come to expect and realize over the course of many years is that the hacking, as you said, the hacking is not going to stop.
Right.
It's just going to evolve as your systems evolve, as how you use those systems evolve, and how your user population evolves. Those hacking techniques are going to continue to morph and evolve so that they can remain effective. This has turned into big business for the hacking community. So what we're seeing in the COVID world is a change in new normal, at least for some period of time, where folks aren't going to the office. They're working remotely. They're doing other things on their home systems or work laptops that they would typically have done from the office. And so that increases the exposure in certain parts of the environment. But we also have to realize that all that legacy environment is not going away either. So those systems that are up and running, all those servers and applications in the data centers, they're still running exposed. And organizations have to make sure that they're continuing to secure those applications, even if they have to do it, remote hands.
I think you hit on a very critical piece there about the legacy systems running. I think a lot of organizations are now really focused on their people, the remote work people, but not on the machines that are running in the background, the other environments they have to protect. So, what do you think, or what could you advise us at the organizations actually? What could you advise these organizations to do at this point when they're just juggling their remote workforce and they also have to focus on the machines running and also making sure that things are up to snuff and not going down in other factors? Certainly when we're all working remotely, what can be done now?
So the number one piece of advice that I would give folks, security is like a microcosm of modern life. Nothing ever gets easier. You never have fewer things on your plate and on your agenda. Maybe you do from a personal schedule perspective due to COVID, but typically things just get added on. And so what we see is that organizations are used to operating a certain way. Now they have this new challenge of a remote workforce and more remote systems and requiring more access than they've had previously for these systems coming to them. And so as that attack surface is evolving and changing, and now this part is larger than it was, but this part hasn't gone away, but time is still limited, the number one thing that security teams can do is prioritize their time.
Yeah.
What should I be focused on? How can I have the greatest impact? Where is the greatest exposure at the moment?
What would you say to roles and who's responsible to it? They talk digital transformation across the workforce. It seems like all hands on deck are focused on let's just secure the organization from the inside out with the remote work. How would you say, how do we share this responsibility through an organization?
I, what has been occurring is the first phase of work from home is how do I get my people productive? They're going through this crisis. They're used to working from an office environment. Now they're homes. Now they've got kids at home. They've got all sorts of other things happening in their lives. How do I get my employees productive? How do I get them access to the systems that they need, whether it's on-prem or in our data centers or in cloud environments? Now they're working remotely. How do I get them the access that they need? How do I get them productive? The second phase of that is, okay, great. Now that I've gotten them access, I'm a little bit terrified. They now have access. So how do I go about securing that access? How do I make sure that the systems that they're communicating with or that they're coming into our environment from are secure, are up to speed, are meeting the compliance and regulatory requirements that we have as an organization.
So, has COVID-19 changed any major factors to cybersecurity? As obviously, there's a lot of less physical travel and a lot more electronic communication.
So, COVID has broadened the attack surface. It's broadened the number of systems and that you have to deal with as a security administrator or even as a CIO, as a business. And frequently those systems, you don't have as tight control of those systems as you thought you did inside your environment, right? People are at home and they're going to sites and doing things with their systems at home that they might not feel comfortable doing in a work environment. And so what we're seeing is this new piece of attack surface open up and people have to deal with it. But it's important to also put it in context. What is the change? What does this open up? How do I prioritize this versus the other things happening in my environment, in my traditional environment, in my data centers, in my cloud infrastructure and applications? And how do I prioritize what to address, what to focus on, what to fix? It's finding that balance that I think is critical in the COVID period, especially.
Certainly. And from a personal perspective, were there any surprises or challenges that Tenable has faced when they had to quickly pivot to this new life of remote work?
Tenable has had a strong work culture which empowered and embraced remote work. And so for us, about 65% of our employees were already working some amount of their time remotely. And so our culture really knows how to operate like that. Now, certain functions did have to evolve and change. Support was typically done in our various, geos in the offices. And now, of course, those employees are working remotely. The cold calling, the software, the lead generation reps were doing that from the office, and now they're trying to do that effectively and efficiently from home. Now, the good news is we have a fairly tech-savvy workforce, and that adjustment, almost all of our systems are complete SaaS-based, and so it was easier for us to make that adjustment than many organizations. I'd say the biggest thing was culturally. In the early weeks and month of COVID, it was like, okay, everybody was all in this together. It was like a really sort of rallying level of closeness that we felt as a community and as a company. And I think that helped people get through the shock of how do I start, living life in this new environment. And now I think we'll evolve to like, okay, well, it's been 7 weeks, it's been 8 weeks. Like we've got this. This is actually becoming the new normal that we've got to get used to. And we've seen over the last couple of weeks, employees now starting to ask questions about when we're going back to the offices. And some of them are excited and anticipating to go back to a more normal work environment. And some of them, I think, candidly are scared, saying, hey, look, I love you guys, but I don't necessarily want to be that close to you. And so finding that balance, what is going to be our plan for reopening offices and bringing people back in an environment where they're confident that their safety and health is our top priority.
Certainly. And obviously morale is a key factor when it comes to a company's success as well. And it seems like you have your finger on the pulse there. And any last points that you want to leave our audience with in terms of what should people do when it comes to security if they're being working remotely? Certainly we've covered in different areas, companies have talked about all certain things that people themselves can do to be secure remotely, as well as organizations having certain protocols for their employees. How about some specific pointers, maybe one or two you want to leave our audience with?
The two things that matter most in times of crisis and especially where you've got rapidly evolving changes in how you compute in your technology infrastructure, things are, and it's not just a one-time evolution. Now we're working from home. Those systems working from home, now accessing your systems, those systems working from home, someday will come back to the office with all of their infections and and everything else. And so the two things that matter most in this environment are systems hygiene and people hygiene. And of course, we're all washing our hands. I don't mean that kind of people hygiene. I mean, do you have strong multi-factor authentication? Are you able to identify and authenticate your users and your systems remotely and strongly and in a way that is conducive to doing work and not a real, impediment to doing work? And then the systems hygiene itself, right? What do you have in the environment? What's coming back into the environment? Are those systems up to speed? Do they meet your compliance requirements and your security configuration guidelines? And are they infected? And making sure that you have a good understanding of the systems hygiene and the people hygiene, because when you look at all of the threats that we've seen and all the breaches that we've seen over the last several years, they ultimately boil down to changes in the environment where you have bad hygiene, either from a people or a systems perspective. And if you can stay on top of that, you've really beaten the majority of the challenges that you'll face.
Well, terrific points. Thank you so much. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.